Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Robby Rowe Show podcast. This is your host, Robby Rowland. Today we're going to be diving into the concept of pitch design, more specifically talking about how I approach pitch design and some things that I'm looking for from a personal standpoint. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy.
May I have your attention, please?
You're my leader.
Now listening to Clear the Mechanism.
The Robby Rowe Show.
The Robby Rowe Show.
Yo, what's going on, guys? So let's break it down. I did a whole entire article because I've been getting a ton of requests now that we live in the year 2020 and we have technology that's just crazy, and it's definitely in the world of baseball. So I've been getting a lot of requests to do like this pitch design thing. People have seen my videos on my pitch stuff at release and the Rapsodometrics and how all of that plays into practicing my pitches and getting to a point where I'm improving my repertoire. Like, what does that look like? It sounds cool. What does it look like? So I decided to put together a whole piece of content, and it's more specifically targeted towards how I approach pitch design. Now, I don't want you to get an idea thinking that it's an instruction or an education to pitch design. Now, obviously, that's going to be included with what I know, which is a little bit. It's not as much as some people out there know. Speaking of that, I'm actually going to have my boy Jeremy Moschino on the podcast probably tomorrow, and we're really going to dive into it. So be on the lookout for that. I've already recorded a podcast with him, so I'd encourage you to check that one out as well. Again, there's guys a lot smarter than me, so what I wanted to do was just bring you guys content from my personal development, right? So like how I approach these things, how I use the data, and how I, essentially train that way. Now, I think the biggest piece of encouragement, because I know a lot of my listeners are aspiring ball players, college ball players, my biggest piece of encouragement is it's so easy to dive down the rabbit hole and want to know what all of these numbers mean. Trust me, I'm the worst when it comes to that stuff. And when it comes to advice that I would give you is just allow the hitter to give you your absolutes. So what do I mean by that? Data is giving us absolutes, absolutely, like no doubt about it. It's giving us pretty clear-cut answers as far as your pitch repertoire and your strengths, your weaknesses, and so on and so forth. But I think at the end of the day, the hitter, the guy in the box, he's going to give you as much information as you need. So on one hand, don't think that you have to do these pitch design sessions or you have to have all of this technology in order to be successful in the game today, because it's all just pieces to the puzzle. It's all just tools, right? And then on the other hand, obviously don't think that you have to understand everything and know everything in order for you to be the best pitcher that you need to be. I think there's a huge underlying factor of identification, knowing yourself, how much information can you handle without totally overloading your brain and getting away from what makes you you. Now, I'm going to include the video clip. It's about a 14-minute talking segment, but I also wanted to talk about a few things before I include that into this podcast, because there were some things as I played it back that I realized I didn't really hit on in that thing. But like I said, I put together a whole piece of content on this. The link will be found in the show notes of this. So whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, just go to the show notes and click the link. It's therobbyroweshow.com/pitch-design. And like I said, it's got everything included. It'll include that 14-minute video, but that video will also include a lot of my pitch design content. And I know a lot of people like looking at that stuff. I like looking at that stuff. It's pretty cool. So I have also my entire YouTube pitch design playlist embedded in that article. It's about 50 plus videos of pitch design stuff with some Rapsodo metrics integrated into that. So again, if you're listening to this, just go check out that article when you get some free time. So a couple things that I want to dive into on this pre-roll before I include that video of how I approach pitch design sessions is the first thing is, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you want some context and you want some information on how you can utilize and how you can approach these things yourself, or maybe you're just a newbie to like throwing on a Rapsodo and you have no idea like what any of these numbers are. Like I said, I've networked with a lot of other people on this podcast that are smarter than me. I would encourage you to again go click the link to the full article, because I linked a couple podcasts that I did on there with like Dean Jackson, Kyle Bodie, Jeremy Machino, guys that can dive into deeper concepts of the data that will paint a better picture for you. But for me personally, as a player, and having gone through all this stuff, my advice to you is obviously A, like, don't overanalyze everything. B, don't totally reinvent your repertoire or reinvent your entire systematic approach to pitching just because like your numbers don't match up with numbers of someone that shoves. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very easy thing to do. I think especially in the game of baseball, we see, you know, our peers, or we see some teammates that go out and carve every single outing, and it's easy for us to be like, oh, well, what's your data? And then try to, you know, fit that mold. Or that's not always the case. Like, that's the beauty of throwing, is everyone's going to go about it differently. Now, this is a segue into why I absolutely love using a Rapsodo, using a pitch logic, using a Diamond Kinetics, and having an idea of your pitch data, because it paints a really good picture for you to understand your strengths and weaknesses. And with that, then you can start to develop, you know, pitch design sessions and what you're specifically working on in those pitch design sessions. So as you'll hear when I include this video breakdown that I did on how I approach them, is like, first you get that baseline, right? So you hop up on a Rapsodo, or you throw with a pitch logic, you throw with a Diamond Kinetics, and that kind of gives you your baseline numbers, and that will also give you a good idea of what you do well. And I think everything kind of, and again, this is me speaking from personal experience, but I think everything will play off the fastball. So you got to identify what kind of fastball pitcher you are. And I guess what I mean by that is 4-seam guy, 2-seam guy, what's your movement profile on those two pitches? And now we can kind of see or build a repertoire off of that. So for example, and I apologize if I say these things twice, because like I said, I'll include another video or another audio clip in here. But for me, I didn't know what to expect as soon as I hopped up on a Rapsodo, because I write this in the article. I actually got hurt at like the best time possible, because as soon as I went down, the frickin' data analytics just exploded on the scene. So I had 2 years to just dive into this stuff without having to overcomplicate it in my head while pitching. So when I hopped up on a Rapsodo for the first time, I knew a lot of stuff to like look for and stuff I wanted to do and wanted to look at and all of this stuff, but I had no idea what my repertoire was going to consist of. So for me, I was actually really surprised to see like, oh, well, I throw a 4-seam fastball, I have low spin, but my movement profile, like I get good lift, I get good vertical movement. So from that point of view, I'm a high percentage fastball thrower. So now I'm going to build a repertoire that best equips me to perform and have success off my fastball, which is why I continuously go back to that 12-6 curveball that I'm trying to design, essentially. That's not going too well if you've been following me for a while. So that's my advice, is like, hop up there, you know, throw with one of those balls, and then throw in a Rapsodo and just get your baseline. Don't overanalyze it. You know, like, I know it's super easy to say and another thing to do, but once you get your baseline numbers, I would say then that's when you can start to build, you know, your repertoire. And it's not the worst thing in the world to like not know. And I think the beauty of the industry and the beauty of the society that we live in is we have the ability to connect with someone that knows information that we want to know. I mean, that's the coolest part about my podcast or social media and networking is like when I first started diving into all this stuff, I didn't know it. I'm a better learner when I'm one-on-one with somebody. So I was like, I'm reaching out to anyone that I know that knows this stuff so I can learn it, and I think you could do the same. Good segue into talking about the new platform that I just released on my website. It's an Ask Robby Row platform. So you can ask me any question that you want. I get a lot of questions. Okay, so for those of you guys that are trying to get a hold of me via Instagram or TikTok DM, to be honest, can't look at those. So the new asking platform, it's therobbyrowshow.com/ask. It's as simple as that. And you can go on there and you can ask me a question and I'll get back to you. So if you have any questions regarding pitch design, be sure to hit that link. I'll include that link as well in the show notes. Ask me a question. Okay, so before we dive into how I approach pitch design, shout out to the sponsors of this particular episode, and who better than Pitch Logic and Diamond Kinetics. They have been sponsors for a while. We partnered, I partnered both companies like right when I got started throwing like my bullpens, actually. So they have been so kind to provide you guys with discount options if you are somebody interested in getting these metrics, and not only getting these metrics for yourself, but getting these metrics at a very affordable price. Now, one of the most popular questions that I get is, what's the difference between Pitch Logic, between Diamond Kinetics, and this and that to Rapsodo, and so on and so forth. So I took care of that for you guys. I did a bunch of reviews. I did comparison videos. All of that stuff I will link in the show notes. So I have a Pitch Logic review. I have a Diamond Kinetics review. I have a comparison video to Rapsodo, and just so you can get an understanding for like what I've seen from my units as far as how they kind of measure up. So Pitch Logic discount, they're going to give you guys a discount. Like I said, code Robby, ROBBY. Diamond Kinetics, code Robby10. But like I said, I'll include the what was I saying? I'll include the reviews that I did with both on that website, that you can check out the whole entire pitch design. I'm losing it, guys. All right, I'm going to include this 14-minute audio of me talking about how I approach. There's so much more information that I could give you guys, because there's a lot of things that I'm like experimenting with right now, but I'll hold off. As I mentioned, if you have a question, therobbyrowshow.com/ask. And if you don't, no worries. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you got a lot of choices when listening to your podcast, so I just want to say I'm forever grateful that you chose the Robby Row Show podcast. All right, we're going to get to this little audio clip. I don't know if it's a clip, if it's considered 14 minutes. You can listen to that. It'll include everything in terms of how I approach pitch design. And then afterwards, you get done listening to this and you're feeling like a giving mood, then go ahead and leave me a review, because everyone likes a review. This is how I approach my pitch design sessions. When it comes to me and having a design day, I want you to remember that this is me. I'm only going to speak towards me and what I'm working towards obtaining. Now, this is going to look differently for everyone. I would encourage you guys to get a better understanding if you're a little bit more advanced. If you're not advanced and you're a young kid watching this, you don't need to overanalyze it. This is one thing that's in the gray area of the industry in baseball today. We have so much information, we have so much data, we have so many numbers, and it's really easy for somebody to dive down all these rabbit holes and then just totally like lose themselves in the simplicity of throwing a baseball and just competing and getting out. So, all right, so speaking from my personal design days, I try to segment as best I can. Now, I can't really have a design day and go into it and be like, okay, I'm going to work on all 5, 6, 7 of my pitches, whatever, point in the career that I'm at. I have to be specific, and I have to segment each and every one of those pitches. And now the way that I approach is I'll have like one pitch that's the main focal point of the day. I'm going to spend most of my throwing exertion, throwing volume on that one pitch. And then I'm going to take that one pitch and I'm going to pair that with a different pitch. Could be fastball cutter, fastball changeup, fastball curveball, or it could be cutter slider, or it could be changeup curve, like any type of pitch pairing that I see that I need to improve on. I'll focus that on the design day as well. You'll see a couple clips on here in which is more specifically tailored to pairing those, So I'll start with the staple of my repertoire is the four-seam fastball. Now, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on my four-seam fastball as far as the design. Now, I just recently did spend a lot of time on my four-seam fastball because there were some things that I wanted to experiment with and play around with. But for me, I'm over-the-top guy. I'm relying on true backspin of 612. I'm getting the ball to spin like this, so I'm focusing on how much vertical movement can I get. Now, how can I influence that vertical movement? That varies depending on, spin rate, spin efficiency. I've always been a guy that can spin it at a 97 to 100% on average as far as the efficiency goes. And now spin rate is a whole nother beast in and of itself. I am not someone that can spin it with the best of them. I actually would consider myself low to average spin rate. That's been something that I've been experimenting with on how can I naturally, authentically get more spin on the ball, whether it be, some spin rate theories that I have with the fingers closed, the fingertip pressure on different parts of the seam, thumb placement, all this stuff. But when push comes to shove for me in the four-seam fastball, my design days for that are looking at the slow-mo video, making sure that when I'm releasing the ball that my fingers are both behind the baseball and on time. I'm not around it. Making sure that I'm in my slot consistently, or else that'll kind of get the ball to cut or maybe run a little bit more than I want. I actually don't want run. If you see like my metrics for the horizontal, I want that actually as close to 0 as possible. I'm probably around like 6 to 8. But for me, I'm really focusing on as much vertical as I can. And of late, been trying to get my fastball to be as close to the 12 o'clock axis as possible, which will, in my opinion, give it a better opportunity for it to do what I want it to do and stay true and ride a little bit. But that's my four-seamer. Again, on design days, I'm not at 100%. I'm not letting it eat, but it is crucial to do your design days with a little bit of effort, because you can't go into it at 30% and then get these metrics and then all of a sudden like go into a game and be at 110% and then they're not there. They're not the same. You know what I mean? You got to kind of practice as how you play, so they say. And then second most spent time designing a pitch, I would say, would be either my curveball or my slider. Now, at different points in my career, I usually throw one or the other. Now, the curveball has been something that, in my honest opinion, I really wish I could have a really good curveball. But I just don't. One thing that I've been really, really focusing on now, for me specifically looking at my curveball on design days, I'm looking at the axis first. I'm trying to get that axis as close to 6 as possible. Now I'm looking at the movement profile. Again, it's gonna mirror my fastball, but opposite, right? Curveball wants to mirror my fastball. So my fastball is here. I want my curveball there. I don't want this or that and that. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm looking at the vertical break on it. I want to kind of mirror the fastball on that. High teens, that would be fantastic. That would be pretty much MLB elite. And I'm looking at the horizontal. For me, the horizontal has been a grind for my curveball because I can't quite get that, as you see in a lot of these design clips. And then spin rate. My spin rate on my curveball is, again, very low, average. My efficiency has been one thing that I've been hammering in my design, is how can I get that more efficient. I'll have some that are like 59, some that are 82. I would say my best is at 90%, again, trying to be as efficient as possible with that. And then on the slider, I'm on my design days, it's really cool to see the slow motion video and then pair that with like the actual data, because it's a clear representation for like what I'm doing wrong. I guess that's for like any pitch that I'm throwing on design days. But for the slider, I'm trying to get it around 30% efficiency. I'm trying to get that thing to move late. Something that I've worked on and had trouble with in my career was, the catch play slider, where you like throw it in catch play and the partner's like, wow, that's moving a lot, but it's predictable movement, it's early movement, and that's something that hitters will put in the upper deck. So ever since, this whole data analytical thing and design thing became a mainstream, that was one thing that I really wanted to focus on, was like, all right, I gotta get my slider like late bite, so the efficiency number for me on the slider was something that I really magnified. Okay, can I get it to 30? Can I get it lower than 30? I'm trying to get my horizontal and vertical around the -6, and then I'm trying to throw it pretty dang hard, right? There's been times where I've looked at my cutter and I've looked at my slider and I'm just like, gosh, I wish I could just blend those two guys together. My cutter is hard, but it's very minimal movement and it's high efficiency, and then my slider is very soft and kind of the opposite. But that's another thing that I'm probably going to be in the upcoming weeks working on is, all right, can I take one of the two and just blend it into one, which they kind of usually do during the season anyways, to really maximize my repertoire. And then when it comes to the changeup, when I've been a starter, I've used more of a straight change. You can see on my website, I have a pitch breakdown on how I go about that and everything. On that, I'm just looking at spin axis around 130. I'm looking at the movement profile. I'm looking at the spin efficiency as high as possible, trying to mirror my fastball as best as I can. There's been times where I've actually thought I've thrown pretty nasty changeups, as you'll see in some of the clips, and it's actually not what I want as far as the efficiency number goes. You can see that I'm pulling down on this seam and creating like this side axis, which leaves the efficiency right around 88, maybe 90. But then just recent, I've come back to the splitter. That's something that I need to do more design sessions on in these upcoming weeks before winter ball, because that's something I don't really know a whole lot of like data metrics to look for. All I know is I want to take as much spin off the ball as possible, and I've actually done that with my splitter in the first design session I had with it since I got home from the season, and it was spinning around like 700, which I would say 600 is like MLB best, elite. So it's going to give the ball a really good opportunity to move if that spin number is so low. What else? Cutter, I guess. For me, the cutter is very simplistic. I mean, it's a fastball that all I'm looking at on my design days when I'm looking at cutter. And just to give you some context, when I'm doing a cutter design day, it's not really focusing on the cutter. It's more focusing on fastball cutter, because those two are going to pair off each other. I'm looking at how can I get the cutter. My mom's vacuuming. That's so frustrating. I sound like a 14-year-old kid. Ma! But I'm looking at like the cutter as close to the fastball as possible. So that's when that slow motion really comes into use. The ability to see the fastball being true behind it, energy behind the baseball, and leaving with those two fingers. And then the cutter, same thing, but just a tilted axis. And I'm looking at the spin efficiency number, obviously, and then the movement profiles on the cutter compared to the fastball, and then the axis on the cutter as well. All these numbers, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of different ways to look at it and ways to deem whatever X number is efficient or not efficient. My biggest piece of encouragement, anyone listening to this, wanting more information on design and stuff, don't get into a habit of looking at your data and deeming that as the most superior information that you need. The most superior information you need is going to be from the guy in the box hitting against you. That's something that I learned going into this last season. I hadn't played in 2 years, and I was doing all these design days, and I'm like, freaking hey, dude, I'm equipped with all these nasty pitches and stuff. And I found out that the hitters weren't really telling me the same information just from their performance off me that the numbers were saying. So I would always encourage people that design stuff is great, and to understand your numbers is great, and understand your repertoire and how to best attack guys is fantastic. But when it comes to what those hitters are saying based off of how they hit off you, that's going to be your trump card. And I would always say that to get their feedback, man. The hitter's feedback is fantastic. It is unmatched, especially if you have a hitter that knows what he's doing and knows what he's looking for. You can pair that up with the numbers you're getting off of data, Rapsodo, Pitch Logic, Diamond Kinetics, and all that stuff. So I've also done design days like on flat ground. Those are obviously not going to be super focused on the movement profiles, but the design days on flat ground have been super beneficial for me because I can know exactly going into that session what I'm shooting for. So for example, fastball four-seam design, I'm trying to get closest 12 as possible. Now that's going to look really different, but the pitch tracker, like a Diamond Kinetics and a Pitch Logic, I have discount codes for both. Shameless plug. Go to my website, search partnerships and discount. I'll include the link in the full breakdown. But those can be great tools because if I go into that flat ground design session, all I'm looking for is like one number, or even like what else? Like the axis is obviously the number that I would look for, and then the spin efficiency number would be another number that I'm looking for and that I can manipulate a little bit. And then the slow motion, the stuff that I do on slow motion on flat ground is super beneficial because it's like instant feedback, especially if I'm working on like a curveball. I'm throwing this thing and it's tilted this way, or it's like I'm not getting that way, and you can see that the axis isn't as close to 6 as possible. So all I need to do is get that Johnny right there, and it's like, all right, now this next rep I'm going to really focus on getting that, and I'm overemphasizing feelings and so on and so forth. So you don't just have to do design on a mound. Obviously, it's most beneficial on a mound, but if you want to do it on flat ground, you have the means to do that, then that's fantastic. I get a lot of questions regarding how do you do pitch design stuff on a budget. I think everyone has like a phone that, this is the iPhone 11, the one with the 2-camera deal, and these have 1080 at 240 frames per second, which is pretty dang fantastic if you ask me. So hopefully that answered a lot of your guys' questions. Hopefully it was beneficial. If you have any questions, I have a new platform on my website in which you can ask any question you have, therobbyroshow.com/ask. Simple as that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe to my YouTube. That's all I got. See you guys.